Well, hello my sugar beasties, thank you so much for joining me again. If you've not been here before, my name's Janine and this is That's Cakeable. In this week's tutorial, I'm going to show you how I made this beautiful, classy, elegant bouquet box filled with gorgeous wafer paper roses. This cake would be perfect for something like Mother's Day or just that special someone's special day. Now I know I've shown you how to make wafer paper roses before, but I'm going to deep dive a little bit further and refine them a little bit more in this tutorial. Oh, and before we get into it, I would love if you would subscribe to my channel just by hitting that little button down there. Just there. It's right there. Down there. Yep. And hit that notification bell so that you're informed every time I upload a new video. It only takes a second of your time, but it will help me out more than you know. Well, once again, I've rambled on long enough, so let's get on with the tutorial. To start off the project, I'm using a foam rose cone for the center of my rose, and I'm attaching a toothpick to it just using a little bit of hot glue. Now, my wafer paper was a little bit crunchy and old, so I've moistened it up with some More Moist from Moorish Cakes, which is a wafer paper conditioner, and it works wonders. Just a spritz on both sides, leave it for 10 minutes, and she's good to go. Now, to make my smaller petals, I'm using a 1.5 inch round circle. Well, of course it's a round circle because circles are round. Cutter, and I'm just cutting out some circles from my wafer paper, and I wanted them to be more petal shaped, so I then went in with a pair of scissors and I cut them to shape. Now let's work on the center of the rose. So I'm covering my rose cone in some Tylose glue, and I attach one petal to one side. I take the left hand side and I curl it inwards. Now, attaching the wafer paper to foam can be a little bit tricky. It doesn't like sticking every single time, but persist and you will get there. I attach another petal directly opposite and put the left hand side of that underneath the first part I've just twisted under. And then I twist the right hand side around and the right hand side of the first petal around to make a little cone. This doesn't have to be perfect, we are adding more right here. So I'm adding 2 more petals now. I've added Tylose glue just to the left hand side because that's the side we're sticking down initially. So see, once again, I'm sticking down the left hand side, leaving the right open. Then with the second petal, I stick the left hand side right underneath that right hand side of the first petal. I hope this makes sense. And then I attach the right hand side of the first petal over the second petal, twisting it around, and do the same with the second petal. You want to keep the center nice and tight. Just tidying it up there a little bit. Now for our next petals, I want them more cupped. So I'm just making a little slit in the base of each petal, adding a bit of Tylose glue, crossing it over, just like that. And you'll see that it's now cupped. It's an easy way to cup our petals. Once again, I attach the first petal, just attaching the left, tuck in the second petal, attaching the left, and with the first petal, I attach the right around the second petal, just like that. Now, as you move on with each row of petals, you want to raise them slightly above the center, like ever so slightly, and keep them just a tiny bit more open as you go around. The way to do this is not attaching as much glue around the center of the rose. Continue going around until you have finished that row. You can see it's getting slightly looser as we go around. Now for our next row, I wanted to give the petals a little more movement. So I'm using a steamer here, and then I take a scribe tool and I just curl back either side at the top of the petal, just curling backwards. Just like that. Once again, I attach them exactly the same way, slightly less glue, not quite as much, pushing the left-hand side down, wrapping the right, so on and so forth. And I went around and I did a few rows of this. Now, You can choose to use as many rows as you want until it's got the aesthetic that you like. Onto the larger petals, I'm now using a 2-inch circle cutter, and I followed the same principles, cut them into petal shapes. And this time I'm using More Curl, which is another product from Moorish Cakes, which is a wafer paper curling conditioner. So if you spray either side of your wafer paper petals and just let them sit, they will start curling all on their lonesome, as you can see here. Now I went in a little bit too early, I was a bit impatient, and I started attaching them too soon, but if you leave them a little bit longer, they will dry out more and make them easier to attach. So once again, I'm cupping the larger petals, and now I'm attaching them to the rows in exactly the same fashion, attaching them lower down on the center with less glue, but you want the petal raised slightly higher than the last row. This way they'll be slightly higher and more open. Now for my last row of petals, I decided to flip my rows upside down. I found it easier to manage at this stage, and just tucked each petal under the last. Just like that. I'm no rose expert, believe me, but I was pretty happy with how this turned out. Okay, now let's get on with the cake. So I've got a 7-inch dummy cake here, and I'm measuring the circumference and height with a fabric tape measure. And then I've cut out a piece of baking paper using those measurements, but going slightly taller, so about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch taller. You can see there I've got a lip. Now I'm rolling out some white fondant, and you want it to be long enough and high enough that it's going to fit on that baking paper template we've just made. Using a little bit of vegetable shortening to attach the baking paper to the fondant. I'm going to attach that, and then I'm going to cut around that template, cutting out that fondant to size. Excuse my giant head. Okay, now we've got the template ready, all cut to size. Now what I've gone ahead and done is rolled out a piece of black fondant that will be long enough to go around the cake also. And I'm taking an acrylic ruler, like that, and I'm just going to cut out a strip of black fondant. Now I want to attach it to the top, but I only want 1 or 2 centimeters showing. So using my acrylic ruler again, I'm making a straight line, leaving 1 to 2 centimeters of white fondant showing. And then I'm just rubbing some vegetable shortening on that line so I can attach my black fondant. Leaving the ruler there so I get it nice and straight, well, as straight as possible. I then attach the black fondant to the top of the white. I just move that ruler upwards and continue the process along the entire length of the white fondant. I then just smooth it down so you can see that top seam. Now don't cut off that excess, we want to keep that. I'm then attaching my template once again with a bit of vegetable shortening. And then I'm going to flip this guy over. Now with that excess black stripe, you want to fold that over the top of the white fondant and push it downwards. Now this is the back of the fondant, so it's going to be facing inwards on the cake, so you won't see it, but I wanted more of a band at the top that was softer rather than just a harsh ribbon or harsh line. I just cut off that excess, and then of course I flip it over, check that everything is good to go. And now I've put some vegetable shortening on my dummy. Of course you can attach your fondant with water or piping gel also. And then I pick up my template that now has the fondant on it, and I wrap it around the circumference of my cake using a smoother just to make sure it's nice and even. And then I remove the baking paper. Cut down the back where there's an overlap to cut off the excess. And then I just smooth those two pieces together to pretty much hide the seam. Now I want to put another band on the base of the bouquet box. So once again, I'm rolling out a piece of black fondant and using my acrylic ruler again, cutting out another strip. And I'm going to use the same template just to make it easy to place onto the cake. So attaching that black fondant right at the base in a nice straight line with a bit of vegetable shortening. I cut off the excess. Once again, using some vegetable shortening to attach. I like using vegetable shortening when putting black on white because it doesn't leave as much of a mess if you make a mistake. And then I wrap that black band around just like I wrapped the entire cake in fondant. Here I have a edible image and I'm attaching that to the cake with some piping gel. I find piping gel the best medium to attach edible images to cakes with. Especially when they don't have a fondant backing. It's nice and sticky and tacky, but it doesn't seep through and ruin your image. And that's on. Now just to tizzy it up a little bit, I'm cheating here. I'm taking some real ribbon and attaching some double-sided tape to it. And then I'm putting it around the center of the black band on the base of the cake. I also went ahead and added a little bow at the front later on too. Let's place the roses. So you want to take the roses, this is why I put them on toothpicks, and place them at the edge of the box. So you want to do the circumference of the box first, all the way around the outside. And then pop one in the center to fill it out. That's the beauty of wafer paper. You can sort of manipulate them and move them around until they fit just as you like them. Just to finish it off, just to be a bit extra, of course, this is optional, I've put some rose water into a spritzer bottle, and from quite a distance, a good 10 to 15 centimeters, and not too much, I've spritzed the entire bouquet on the top, bouquet, on the top to make it smell like roses. And that is it, guys. That's how you make this gorgeous rose bouquet box. Like I said, you could make it for Mother's Day, a special lady's birthday. It's very versatile. You can change up the colors, the logo, the branding, and make it your own. Well, my beautiful people, if you like this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, like I said at the top, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so I can let you know every time I upload a new video. I hope you're all safe and well, and I look forward to seeing you next time. But until then, you know what you have to do. Go and get your cake on. I'll see you next time, guys. Bye-bye.